and hello everybody. I appreciate taking the time to come and watch the webinar today. I have some interesting things, and if you haven't taken a look at client side, I think this will be really useful for you. So I'm going to start off by asking the question of why is client side important or useful for us when dealing with charting? And I think it really comes down to it. It gives you the ability to have some interactivity with your charts. So versus just making your charts a static or read-only thing, it allows you to create behaviors like drill downs or mouse over or calling out annotations or even calling back to add indicators, things of that nature. So to me, the client-side interactivity is all about expanding the existing behavior and really enabling your end users to interact with your charts versus just react to your charts. So that's really the why. And as I also want to mention a couple of scenarios. So we mentioned, drill down being one of them, mouse over, some of the dashboard-like functionality, or not so much drill down, but drill next to. So having one chart that is next to another, so that when you change one or click on something on one chart, it affects the chart next to it. Things like financial data, being able to hover over and see, the price, the open, low, high, and close of a stock price in text value, as well as seeing it in the bars. Also, notifications, being able to pull out and show interesting data points. So I think that's a handful of scenarios. What we're going to look at today is we're going to look at some of the hot tracking features and how the client side ties into that. What I've got here is a fairly basic chart. I added some static data. It's pretty simple. Now, to start working with client side, there's a couple things you have to do. One of them is go to the properties for the chart and enable the client side API. By default, that's turned off. And we're also using the client side point to diagram. And what this allows us to do is take the mouse coordinates and turn those into diagram coordinates and vice versa. So it gives us all of the data behind and allows us to use the point to diagram and diagram to point methods in the client API. So I'm going to turn that on as well. A couple other things you may see here. You have enable callbacks and you have enable callback compression. Callbacks is just that, being able to call back, and then compression is something that shrinks that and makes those packages a little smaller so they take up a little less space. All right, so we enabled those two properties right there. Like I said, those are required for what I'm going to be doing today. We're going to switch over to source here. Actually, before we do that, we're going to add a quick call. I'm going to hit the smart tag, and you'll notice there's a link here for client-side events. When I click that, it pulls up our little client-side event editor and gives you some of the basic client-side events that you can adjust, or so you can edit. We have begin and end callback. We have callback error, init, object hot tracked, and object selected. I think the first four are probably pretty simple. Most people have seen something along those lines. Anytime they do any kind of async, you have the begin and end, callback error, and init is on init of the chart, so allowing you to perform some sort of client functionality when the chart inits. The ones we're going to be using today actually is just the object hot tracked. And what that is it fires anytime the mouse is over the chart. And as you can see here in the function declaration, we have S for sender, E for events, and object hot track is going to have both those. So S is going to be the chart object itself. E is going to be the hot tracked event args, which we'll be taking a look at in a little bit. And the other side is object selected. So this is when you click on, if you're to click on something for, say, a drill down or really any kind of functionality, this is, instead of mouse move, it's all about the click. So again, same thing. You have the sender and then the event args. All right, so in this case, I'm going to call something called get chord values. Doesn't exist yet. We're gonna use it shortly. We're gonna pass in the sender and event args. And I'm going to hit OK. Let's go take a look at what happened when I did that. So let's see. Here we go. When you add something via that event editor, it gets put in here under client-side events, object hot tracked, this being, of course, the name of the function of the client-side event we want to use, and then the script. Now, this is part of the chart. As you see, it's contained within the chart control. And I could go ahead and paste all the code in here. Actually, I wouldn't want to do it here. I'd want to do it in the editor because you do have to respect the ampersands, the less than or greater than, and any quotes and things like that. You need to HTML encode those. And using the editor automatically handles that for us. So, but that's okay. I actually want to do it this way for one big reason in particular, and that's IntelliSense. For those of you that have been doing development for a while, you know, in .NET, IntelliSense is nice. It's nice to shop around. It's nice to be able to see what your options are. It really helps for discoverability. So, and as you see, as I scroll up here to the top, this is the first bit here. And what this is saying is if we're in design mode, go ahead and add this file, which is ASPChartingClientSideWebinar.js. This is the IntelliSense file for all of our client-side code. This enables the IntelliSense for all of our client-side code. You'll find this in your DevExpress /component/sources /DevExpress ASP script IntelliSense folder. It's a single JS file. I had already included it here in the scripts folder. And like I said, all it's there for is really enabling that IntelliSense when we're doing our coding here. Also, if you're doing code in a JS file versus, as I'm doing here, in a script tag, you can also use, I'll paste it in here, you can also use this, which is 3 slashes, a reference, path equals, and then the name of your script file. In reality, it would look like that. So again, if you're using a JS file, so if I had a main.js or something like that I was calling from in here, I could use this and I would get the IntelliSense within the JS file. This bit, of course, is used for the ASPX. All right, so enough about the IntelliSense. I'm going to go ahead and paste in that method. I'm going to talk a little bit about what it does and how it's useful for us. So we go. There's get chord values. As I said, takes in a sender and the event args. What it then does is gets an instance of the chart itself. It gets the client instance. Now you notice I'm using something here, ASPX client web chart control.cast. In reality, the sender is already a chart, so I could do a call to get chart and set that to some variable, and that would work. Now, as I said, I wanted to take advantage of the IntelliSense, and to be able to do that, cast is the way we basically bind that JavaScript to the code listed in this file. So let's take a little bit of look about what that does for us. And actually, I'm going to go ahead and remove the get chart call there. And there we go. So now we can actually see, versus having the default, 8 or so that are in there, we can see all the things that are available for chart. And there's honestly, it's huge. I'll show you where the documentation is on that a little later. But again, that's the reason I'm using cast. Otherwise, I wouldn't get the IntelliSense. I'd get just those default 7 items. So by using cast, you're enabling the IntelliSense on the item. So I'm calling get chart. All right, and then we're going to call chart.diagram. And diagram, if we're looking at our chart, is anything within this rectangle here. So we're going to call diagram, point to diagram. And we're going to take the X and Y passed in from the event args. And since this is coming from the hit info event, these X and Y are relative to the control itself. So these aren't the absolute X and Y for the entire page, they are the X and Y for the chart. So we're going to pass those into point to diagram, and it's going to return me back a, what is it, ASPX client diagram coordinate object. And I actually have the documentation up for that. And I want to take a look at a couple of things in there. So as I said, this takes an XY of the chart diagram, or of the chart, and returns this block of data. So it allows me to get the scale type for either the argument or the value, as well as the X and Y axis, and the values for the argument and the series value. Also allowing for date, time, numerical, or qualitative. So in this scenario, what we're gonna do is we're going to grab those coordinates and we're going to throw them in a label, which I haven't created yet, which we'll throw on here in a moment. And we're going to throw the x, y values, and we're going to put the argument in the x, we're going to put the value in the y. Pretty simple and straightforward. We're going to go down here really quick. We're going to add those labels. Give a little bit of space right here. And we're going to use the DevExpress ASPX label control. And there it is. So we're going to drag 2 of those on there. And I'm going to add a little break in between them. And the other thing I'm going to do is I'm going to change the client instance name. Now, by defining this client instance name, I'm basically telling the control that, hey, when you're rendering out, throw in a chunk of JavaScript that allows me to access the client-side abilities of this, or that I can use to reference the client-side abilities. So there's the X, so label X, and client instance name, and we'll add the other one, label Y. All right, so now we have our 2 labels. Oh, I suppose we should give those some default text as well. Let's see, text equals, we'll say X, and then we'll do the same except Y. So there we go. All right, so let's take a quick look at what we've got here. We have a chunk of JavaScript that grabs our XY coordinates, grabs the date value off that, and the chart I'm using just uses years, so I'm calling it get UTC full year, and then it gets the numerical value. So let's go ahead and take a look at that. Run it, and duplicate text. Oh, sorry. I meant to replace the text, not duplicate the tag. There we go. Okay. There we go. And there's the tags. Okay, and it looks like I need to add one more break in there. So we have the X over there to the right and the Y. Now you'll notice that those numbers are updating whether I'm on a series point, which is any of these, the series being one of these lines and the points being the individual dots on the line. I'm getting X, Y values regardless where I am. So you'll see X is representative of the year. So if I hover over 50, there it is, scroll to 70. So I don't have to be within a series. And this is kind of useful for doing something like financial data. You have a big chart, you want to be able to discover and see things that maybe aren't part of the series, but the context around the series. So that's one good use for this. So I'm going to go ahead and clean up that HTML just a little more. I'm going to add an extra break down at the bottom. And here we go. All right, and let's take a look at the next bit of the code. While this is, there's useful, like I said, this adds context around our chart data. We're going to add another client-side chunk of code, and this one's going to be so that if we're looking at a series, we can call out and get specific series data. So in addition to just contextual data, wherever the mouse cursor is, when we hover over a series point, we want to recognize we're over a series point, and have a bit of conditional data. In this case, I'm just going to do a conditional label that either shows up if you're over a series point or doesn't show up if you're not. So I'm going to again paste one in, and we'll take a look at what it's doing. All right. So there we go. We have now one called getHitInfo. And what it's doing is it's taking the hit info off of the event args. As I said before, I have some of this documentation up. We'll take a quick look at that. Chart hit info is the event args that's returned with that. Oh, sorry, that's not entirely true. What gets turned back actually is the hot track event args, which has a handful of things, but one of them is hit info, which we're going to be making reference to. As you can see, you can get the absolute values, you can get the chart object itself, the HTML element, so if you're doing some sort of conditional hiding or something like that, you could do that as well. And then the relative x and y, in addition to the absolutes. So, as I said, the one we're going to be looking at is hit info, and hit info has a lot of members. It allows for a lot of functionality, and it really is kind of one of the big methods for this. And if you're doing any kind of hit testing, you'll end up using this quite a bit. So take the time, look at the client information. I'll show you how to get to that before we wrap up here. All right, so what this is doing is this is going to get the hit info. It's going to see if we're in a series point, and if we are, let's display the name of that series, and then let's spit out the specific argument and value. And you'll notice values is a collection here, an array. And that's for if you're using something like a stock chart, it has 4 values. In this case, this is a simple line chart. We only have 1 value to look at. And yeah, so if we're in a series point, we're going to append some data to a text, and then we're going to set the text. And we need to create that label before we try to run this. All right, so I'm going to hit stop. It's still debugging. Okay. And I'm going to add a couple breaks. And we'll throw in another label right here. So common controls, drag the label on. All right, and we're going to give this no text. So I'm going to go ahead and clear out this text because I want it to be pretty much non-existent unless we're over a series point. So, and we want to do a client, just like the others, do a client instance name. I had already copied that onto the clipboard. There we go. So now we have our label. And the other thing we need to do is call this method. So this is the client-side events object hot track that we had used earlier. And I'm just going to call getHitInfo, which is the name of the method that I pasted in, and pass to it again the sender and event args. All right, now let's save this and take a look again. And there we go. There. So you'll notice that when we're not over a series point, we have our standard XY. The moment I go over a series point, it's seeing that in series point is true, and then it's setting value. It's telling me that I'm over the Americas series. The argument is 1960, and the value is 605. Of course, matching up to the label that we see there. So now what we have is we have obviously our contextual XY data, and then we have specific behavior to execute when we are over a series point. Now let's go back and take another quick look at the documentation. I want to give you an idea of some of the things you could do with this. Just this, I mean, like I said, this hit info is huge and has a lot of really cool functionality. So some of the things we have here is the ability to tell whether you're in an annotation or in an axis or in a title, either a chart title, an axis title, if you're in the chart itself, if you're in a diagram, the legend. So I mean, you're just limited by your imagination here. There's the ability to tell if you're in pretty much any part of a chart, and then you can use client-side code to provide a whole bunch of functionality. And the reality is, client-side code isn't always going to be enough. I mean, sometimes you need to go back to the server, sometimes you need to change the chart. So there's also a couple ways to deal with that, and I'm going to discuss a little bit about it. One of them is this thing called process. I believe it's process on server. We're going to pull it up here. It's actually part of the event args for the hit test. For the hit test and for selected, there it is. Process on server. So process on server is pretty cool. What it allows you to do is it's a Boolean, and what happens? We'll go to code here. If I were to, let's see, we'll scroll up to our code there. Now, if I were to set process on server equals true right here, what would happen is it would execute this client-side code, and then it would, immediately after finishing the execution, would go execute the server-side version of whatever event I'm currently in. So in this case, it's the object hot tracked. It would go execute a server-side version of this, allowing me to do things that I can only do on the server, say manipulate my chart or drill it down. This would be one way we could do drill downs. So, well, actually, I don't want to say it. No, this wouldn't be the way to do drill downs. And the reason being that it is the one limitation of this is you aren't passing values. You're just saying at the end of my JavaScript, of my client-side code, by the way, there's some things I want to execute on the server side, so go ahead and go do that after I'm done here. So that's a pretty awesome feature, and it really allows you to cover both the client side and then also, if you need to, handle the server side. And if you have callbacks turned on, this turns into something that is a callback versus a postback. So executing the server-side code works in an AJAX function, or in an AJAX sort of way. So that's one piece of the extensibility running server-side. The other one is the custom callback. So let's see. We'll go to the designer. Oh, I need to hit stop. And if we go to the designer and click on the chart, one of the events is called custom callback. And what this is this is your general catch-all. And one of the big differences of this is you can pass arguments into this, and you just call this via, I think it's perform callback. Chart, I believe it's chart.perform callback. We'll take a look. And this allows you to pass in parameters, so that if I wanted to create a drill down, this is definitely one way I could do it. So let's see. I want to get the chart IntelliSense. Is it just callback? I'll have to look. In callback, perform callback. That's what it is, not process. Okay. So this allows you to call back to whatever that server-side code is. This happens in a callback manner as well, so there's no postback. And like I said, this is really the catch-all. So if you have some sort of complex functionality you want to happen server-side, for example, if I was looking at a financial chart and I wanted to add a Fibonacci retracement wherever I clicked on the chart, this would be one way I could do it. I could use this to handle the on-click, or on the on-click, I could call back with the currently hovered item. So it's pretty cool functionality, and really opens that up to do just about anything you can imagine there. Like I said, if you can think of it, there's probably a way to get it done. All right, and then the other thing to notice, right here, I'm doing this as I'm using the hit info. There's also something called hit test. And I'm going to grab this chunk of code right here, and I'm going to get rid of the get chart. So I'm going to grab just the chart object, the raw ASPX client chart web control, and this has something called hit test, which again takes in an X and a Y. And the difference between hit test is, you see, it returns an ASPX client hit object. So this returns everything underneath your cursor. So if we go back and take a look at this chart right here, one of the drawbacks for using hit info is it grabs the topmost object, which in this case we have 721 on the Americas and Europe series. They're the same values, and you'll notice that the top one is the Europe series. So if I hover this while it's running and use hit info, I just get the top value. Now, the reality is there's two values under there. This is where I would use something like the hit test. Where did it go? Yeah, so chart.hitTest. This returns, like I said, a collection of everything underneath the mouse cursor. Then I can iterate over those objects returned and determine which ones are series by using the in series, or by using in series or instance of series, and perform, in this case I could set a label saying, I'm over 2 series. Again, just something to give you an idea of the flexibility that you have. You have the ability to either just get the topmost item by using hit info, or you can get every item on the stack underneath your cursor by calling hit test and then iterating over it yourself. So that's what I was going to show you. Oh, actually, there's one more thing I was going to pull in here, and just because it's kind of neat, and it's something probably most people have seen and may not have actually looked into or tried to use. I'm going to go back over here, and I'm going to throw a quick bit of snippet code that I had prepared. What happened to the chart? There we go. All right, and export. What this is it's a menu. It has it has 3 menu items. I'm sorry. Yeah, 3 menu items. One of them's print, save to disk, and save to window. And the last part here is a combo box. I'm going to switch back over to design so you can get an idea what this looks like. I'm sure anybody who's seen our demos has seen the little export buttons up at the top, and maybe you haven't had a chance to actually dig through the code, but I just wanted to show how incredibly easy it was to add this stuff to our charts. I thought it was pretty cool. So here's the code snippet. Again, for those interested, if you ping me at brianw@devexpress.com, I'd be happy to email that out. It's, like I said, it's really easy, and we're going to take a quick look at this. So the combo box holds all of our export options, and these text values are no accident. They're actually what need to be passed into our export functions. They allow you to basically define what kind of export you want to do. And then the last part here is the item click. Since this is a menu, we handle the item click for all of them, and we use the name value to determine which action to call. In this case, we have chart.print, which opens a print dialog, chart.save-to-disk, which opens the save as dialog, and then save to window, which opens the chart in whatever export format you want in its own window. Now, you'll notice the one thing that that I haven't covered yet is it's calling chart. Now, the reality is, chart by default doesn't have a client-side name. So, just like everything else, if I come over here and I type in client instance name equals chart, now, if I didn't do that, I wouldn't actually be able to call the print or save to disk or save to window. I'm going to get rid of client ID mode as well. There we go. Do a quick save, and let's run this and see how it looks. All right, great. I see the our menu selections up here. We have PDF. I'm going to hit the save or export chart and save it to a new window button. And bam, just like that. Oh, and here it comes. It's PDF, so it takes a moment. There we go. I have an exported chart. As you can see, it was really easy to add. And all right, I'm on the fence. Obviously, it's not quite client-side code. It is in the fact that it does need to be called from JavaScript. But it definitely has some server-side. But I thought it was a pretty cool function that probably a lot of people haven't actually seen or haven't taken the time to dig into. I just wanted to show how incredibly easy it was to add that functionality. So, Amanda, that is what I had covered. Do we have any questions?
Hey, Brian, we don't have any questions yet, but if you all do have questions, get them in. We obviously have some time to answer them.
Yeah. And obviously I've spent a lot of time covering the ASP.NET non-MVC version here. For those of you that are looking to uh, take advantage of our MVC charting, I definitely recommend you start reading up on the client-side code, because for those of you that aren't familiar, the MVC definitely relies a lot on the client side in terms of handling things like, let's see, the drill downs, things like that are much easier to be handled on the client-side code. So if you want to take advantage of the MVC stuff, I definitely recommend it. Not that it's not possible, but it will definitely make life easier. And also, for those interested, I will be taking this project that I have here and putting it up on Code Central. So when the webinar video gets posted, we'll make sure that the link to the Code Central, so that you can download the project. Like I said, either take the quick and easy export code that you can pretty much paste into any of your projects to give your charts the export, and also the, of course, the hit testing and the code in there. So if we don't have any questions, anyone?
Looks like we don't. You must have been very
All right.
thorough.
Excellent. Well, I like that. That works. And again, if anything does come up, if you're going through this, you get the code example, and at some point in the future you do come up with questions, please don't hesitate. My email's in the chat there. Drop me an email, do that, leave a comment on the blog, however you want to get a hold of me. I'd be happy to help out. So again, feel free to reach out.
Hey, Brian,
And
what's your Twitter handle?
it is BrianDevX. I will add it to the chat here. DevX. There we go.
Awesome.
So yeah, follow me on Twitter. Again, you can ask questions wherever. Feel free to reach out. I love to get in and get dirty with some of this stuff. So, Amanda, I'll let you.
Great. Thank you, Brian, very much. All right, so Tech Ed Atlanta is coming up in less than 2 weeks, May 16th through the 19th, and DevExpress will be there. If you're attending, please stop by our booth, grab a t-shirt, say hello. The team will be there. I will be there. We'd love to see you. And DevExpress has a great lineup of webinars coming up through the month of May. You can register for them all at devexpress.com/webinars. And our final webinar of this week is tomorrow at 10 a.m. It's an Ask DevExpress XAF webinar with the Express App Framework team headed by our XAF evangelist Gary Short. So if you have any questions for them, please tune in tomorrow at 10 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. And again, if you missed anything from this webinar, or you want to review any previous webinars or check out hundreds of online product tutorials, visit us on the DevExpress channel at tv.devexpress.com. Again, thanks so much, Brian. Thank you all for joining us, and thanks for choosing DevExpress.